Hello everybody, this is treachery taking a look at another diplomacy game. This one was called Anon-24hr. I played Italy. I did not really come into this game with a good opening strategy or a strategy for the full game. Really, I just wanted to take Tunis and then I was going to go from there. And I didn't have a whole lot of luck, so a full strategy would have just been very frustrating. Let's take a look. Right at the very outset of the game, I get attacked full on by Austria. You see here in the fall, all three of his units surrounding my unit or my territory of Venice. He leaves himself completely open to Russia. He gains none of the Balkans. Kind of a weak opening, and I was not hesitant in telling him so. But that's how it was, and I was really fighting uphill from there. I did take Tunis, so I didn't lose any units. And in the fall, or in the next year, I was able to get that territory back. But let's look at a couple other things. A lot of fighting over here, and down here you see what looks like either the beginning of a Russian and Turkish war or the beginning of an elaborate juggernaut, with Russia moving its fleet into Constantinople. As we move out of that turn, you see he orders the fleet straight through. So it is a pretty obvious juggernaut, alliance between Russia and Turkey right from the get-go. And so I try to convince these other nations to stop fighting one another and to move in and help me hold off this force. But in 1903 it just seems like they're more interested in continuing the fight with one another. You see in the spring the fighting between England and France. And also in the fall, they continue fighting with each other. Germany, the only one that turns and begins focusing eastward. And I believe that was a new German player, someone who took over for someone in CD. So even though I would have liked to continue the fight to slow the juggernaut down, I had to start thinking about survival already, only 3 years in. And so I contact Turkey, the biggest threat to my survival, and make a deal with him in which I get convoyed to Tunis, where I hoped to stay. The same thing I did in the game Peace of Mind, if you remember. Turkey wanted me to play a slightly more active role, moving my units in front of his and fighting in France, so you will see that happen. Not a lot of diplomacy going on my part during these phases, just talking with Turkey, because quite frankly France, England, and Germany didn't have much to say. So I move out ahead of Turkey, just disrupting French operations. You see here I move into Marseille and hold that, so he loses that territory. I continue to move and am supported into Spain by Turkey, and just really continue in that strain, helping out the one person who could have taken me out. So really just thinking about surviving the game. However, you see here in 1907, several years into the game, Russia starts moving his units south to stab Turkey. So Turkey, who had been doing fairly well with this Juggernaut alliance, and now has to turn his attention elsewhere. And at this point I really just sit in Portugal and Spain, not doing a whole lot of talking except to Turkey, and giving him what advice I could, and a little bit to England, who has been sitting here with open centers, an exposed backside facing Russia. Probably one of the reasons Russia did so well in this game was because England refused to ever attack him, even though he was obviously the biggest threat on the map. You see England continues to push his attack against Turkey, even though Russia is the more dangerous adversary. And I told him, and I'm sure Turkey probably told him, Russia was just going to stab him in the end, and it was actually quite sweet when he did. We'll get through spring and fall of '09 here, and then you'll see in 1910, the last year of the game, Russia does attack England here in Norway, and then in the fall also here in Holland. not centers that he needed to win the game. He ends up winning the game with 21 centers. I just sit here in exile in Portugal and Spain. Russia taking a huge portion of the map. All of Germany, all of Austria, all of Turkey, all the Balkans, all the Scandinavian countries, plus his own, and Holland. A huge win for him. Not a great game for me, but a fun game nonetheless. So not a lot of commentary there, just wanted to make sure this one was crossed off the list so I could have commentaries for all the games I've played thus far. Thanks for watching, and feel free to leave any questions or comments. Bye.